Hello, kindred spirits. So today I'm working on updating a few things that I have in my wardrobe. I have a lot of plans for projects that I want to start, but I don't want to get sidetracked, so I want to get these updated first. The three pieces that I need to update are a skirt I made last year. It is now too big with my new corset. My new corset, I want to add some padding, and my corset cover, I want to add new ties because I had ribbon ties and they don't tie tight enough and they're fraying, so I want to change those out. So out of the three things, the corset cover was the easiest to update. I just took some of the lacing I had left over from the corset and I took it and I split it in two. I'm now gonna start trying to tie one around in the back and one around the front and see if that holds it in place better. And I just put a little bit of fray check on the ribbon to make sure that the ends didn't split because I don't have any more of the metal protectors. And then I just used my handy dandy threader and I pulled those through the casing, and that was about it. So that was the easiest fix. For the corset padding, I didn't have a pattern in mind or anything. What I ended up doing was using some tissue paper, pinning it to the parts where I wanted to add the padding, and kind of drawing out the area that needed the padding while the corset was on me, and as well as where it needed to have the most stuffing and what needed padding where. Then I just cut out the tissue paper and traced it onto fabric and sewed the two halves together and left the bottom open so I could stuff the padding in. For both the hip and the bust padding, I actually ended up reusing shoulder pads that I had taken out of other things, and they were all wool, so that was great. So I just cut those down to fit into the pieces of padding, and then I took more all natural wool and stuffed that in as well and kind of shaped it where it needed to be, and then I kind of quilted through the whole thing to hold the padding in place where it needed to stay. Again, this wasn't a very hard project. It was pretty quick and easy. I just had to figure out where the padding needed to be. For the bust padding especially, I wanted kind of a ridge to hold me up a little bit more where I wanted it to be. From there, it was just a matter of pinning everything into place and then holding the corset fabric taut while I sewed the padding on, which wasn't much of a problem, and I think it came out really well. And I'm very happy. And now I don't have to keep adding padding and remembering to grab it. It's just sewed in, which is lovely. Now, the last piece that I was fixing was a bit more of a headache. So with the skirt, I needed to take in the waistband because my waist was smaller now in the new corset and it was just too big. I didn't add pockets the first time around. I don't know why, but I soon discovered I really wanted them. So I wanted to add pockets, as well as I wanted to shorten the hem because when I first made it, I left it pretty long. I didn't know how long I wanted it or short I wanted it, so I left it long, but it soon became apparent that it was dragging way too much on the ground. So the tearing apart of the skirt was easy. Putting it back together, though, was a headache. A lot of this skirt, the way I designed it and made it, was hand sewn, and it was a pain in the butt the first time, and it was a pain in the butt the second time, but the second time was worse because I had done it all before, and I was quite quickly very much done with the skirt and wanting to move on to other things. I don't know about you, but it's really hard for me to sometimes return to past projects in order to fix them. And especially with how much time clothing takes to make, I really, especially with this wardrobe where I'm wearing it a lot, I don't want to just have it sitting there and not be worn because it doesn't work anymore. So I really want to take the time to update and make fixes that are going to improve the wardrobe. I have plenty of costume pieces that I have made over the years that just sit and don't do anything because they are no longer wearable or they were ripped or what have you. And with the time and effort that goes into these pieces, that's really a shame. And So I am making an effort now to try to fix things instead of just letting them go to a bin and remain in costume hell. So the process was thusly. I could sew the side seams back up, but I had to tack down the seam allowance to the lining by hand. I could sew on one side of the stiffener and the velvet band with the sewing machine, but then I had to tack down the stiffener's upper edge by hand doing an invisible hemming stitch, and I had to sew the velvet band to the other side of the skirt by hand so that it was an invisible stitch as well. Then I had to sew on by hand the fasteners, and then I had to sew on by hand the trimming that I had to take off. And that's not even the waistband, which I also had to sew by hand on one side. The other side got done by my machine, but I still had to sew it closed by hand on the other side. So 3 seams basically got to be done with the machine, and I could serge the pockets shut. But man, there was a lot of hand sewing. I guess by saying all this, I just want to put the reminder out there that just because you love sewing does not mean that it is easy, that we are always in love with everything we have to do to get a product that we love. It can be really tough and well worth the effort, but man, in the moment, sometimes it's hard to remember what we're heading towards, and it can really just be a grind. And that's not just sewing, that's with everything, just life in general. Okay, I'll stop blathering on. But I love this skirt. I love the design. I love how it looks. It's so much fun to wear. I have been in love with this skirt since I made it the first time, and I really didn't want to not be able to wear it because it was too big. So, well worth the patience and effort that went in to fix everything, but sometimes it is a slog getting through these kinds of projects. Also, shortening that skirt was the right call, because look how swooshy it is. It's awesome. I am so happy with this project. It was tough, but it's done and it's wonderful. I'm really excited for upcoming projects that I want to share with you, getting into a summer wardrobe. But until then, my friends, happy sewing.